Kelly.
And I can see it too.
Everybody.
If there's any
Okay, we're ready. We're ready.
Okay,
So,
we're ready?
I am, and I will speak this way, but I think everybody can see me. There's been much discussion regarding a proposed extension and relocation of a warehouse distribution center near Highway 1077 and I-12. There's also been much discussion about adding a road connecting Highway 21 and 1077. This road and several other roads have been in the parish's long-term thoroughfare plan for many years. These types of roads are designed to expand our east-west traffic capacity, which we certainly need. But the proposed expansion of a warehouse and the long-range plan for a connector road are independent of each other. There are two separate issues. I want to highlight that zoning changes are handled by an independent body of some members you see here tonight, of appointed citizens. It is their responsibility, given to them by the parish charter, to debate, discuss, deny, or approve zoning changes. The Planning and Zoning Board has an obligation to the citizens of this parish to make unbiased decisions. They know this, and it's based on the laws and ordinances of this parish, which they take very seriously. The decisions made by the Planning and Zoning Board can be appealed to the full parish council if an applicant so chooses. I just want to establish that there is a system for these requests, and it will be followed. I will exercise my voice as both a resident of this parish for over 40 years and as a representative of the people who have elected me. I have been an advocate for economic growth and development, but I'm also an advocate for protecting the serenity, the tranquility, and fabric of our neighborhoods. St. Tammany is the fastest growing parish because people want to live here. Our good schools, our well-maintained parks and playgrounds, safe neighborhoods, and accountable government are all qualities that residents and businesses embrace. We have more than 100,000 jobs in this parish, over 259,000 citizens. And while we all revel in that good news, we recognize that we must manage growth where the law allows. I have grave concerns about the proposed location for a warehouse that could stress our infrastructure. I agree with those who have pointed out there may be significant numbers of 18-wheelers rolling through our community as this project matures. I agree that this raises serious safety questions. And I agree that an 800,000 to 1 million square foot warehouse for this area could be problematic. This is not about Medline. Medline has been a good corporate citizen. We want them to expand here in St. Tammany Parish. However, if after tonight's presentation, the information as stated above is confirmed, it is my opinion that this may not be the ideal location for this expansion. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time to make my statement. Thank you.
All right, thank you, President Brester. We appreciate you coming here tonight. And if you think this is a comfortable seat that we're sitting in up here, you're drastically mistaken.
Mine's pretty good.
Let me start out by making a few comments, but before I do, I would like to take just a minute for those of you that may not come to these meetings all that often to have an opportunity to know who you're dealing with. The director of the Department of Planning and Zoning is Mr. Sidney Fontenot. Sidney, would you raise your hand? And would you introduce your staff members?
Well, actually, they're not my staff, but the other individuals at the table are Jay Watson, the parish engineer, and Kelly Rabelais, the CAO.
Okay, thank you. We also have with us Parish District 1 Councilman Marty Dean down on the corner. Marty, we appreciate you being here. and we have 4 of the 11 parish planning and zoning commissioners. Mr. Fitzmaurice, Mr. Weldon, Mr. Seeger, and myself, Lauren. Okay. Having said that, I want to clarify a few things before we start so that we have some ground rules about the way we're going to operate the meeting. Number one, you need to understand that no matter what happens, the parish, St. Tammany Parish, has some of the most stringent planning and zoning commission rules and regulations and ordinances that there are in the state of Louisiana. This is the book that the 11 of us have to follow, and this is the rules that the developers have to follow. So it's not just a matter of us saying, let's take a vote and see where we're going to do something. If something is approved, it's approved contingent upon the rules and the regulations being followed. And that's where the staff comes in, and that's where the commission comes in. Okay. So as we go into this meeting, let me run into a couple of three or four things that we want to get out of the way. First, I would ask that everybody, if you would, put your cell phone on mute. Okay? Because we don't want to sit here listening to music all night. Okay. Number two, for the benefit of those that may watch this on video, this is not the normal setup that we have for a Planning and Zoning Commission. So for the benefit of the audience, it's been agreed upon by both the developer and representatives from the community that the presentation would be made to the audience. Some of the cameras may be back here, so at times people on TV might be looking at the back of somebody's head while the presentation is being made. All right. This is one of the advantages of this kind of meeting is this is much more informal than a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. If you think about those of you who were here the other night when we had the Zoning Commission, there were like 12 or 14 items on the agenda. By rule, each party has 10 minutes to make their case and 5 minutes of rebuttal. Well, if you do the mathematics on that, we would have been here 8 hours. Okay? The benefit of this is we've got one item on the agenda, so we're going to be much more lax on the time. Okay? The next thing that you need to understand is that tonight, the 4 of us are not going to be making a vote. The purpose of this meeting is for the developers to be able to present some information to you all. And quite frankly, the other night at the meeting, there was a lot of information, one side saying it was this and the other side saying it was that. And you have to understand that by law, the 4 of us are not allowed to have a discussion with the developer or interested parties prior to the issue being placed in a public meeting. And that zoning commission meeting was the first meeting. So when we walked in here, we didn't have any background, okay? So the purpose of this meeting is to make sure that we get good information, the best that's available from the developer to you all, so you all know what's planned. And as President Bush has said, no matter what the zoning commission vote is on October the 9th, and the meeting will be on October the 9th because of the election, okay? No matter what the vote is on that night, either party has the right to appeal it, the decision, to the full parish council. Everybody with me so far? Okay. I've only got one or two other minor items. Tonight's meeting is about zoning. And you have to understand the process goes through 4 stages. If zoning is approved, you don't go out and get the final blueprints and the engineering and the flood studies and the traffic studies and all of the detailed, very expensive studies done until you know you got the zoning. Okay, so we're here to talk about zoning. The other items will come up in the subsequent meetings, in public meetings, in the Planning Commission, in the preliminary, well, in the tentative, preliminary, and final approval stages, if it is approved, okay? And that's when they have to get very detailed about how they're going to meet the requirements in this big, thick book. Okay. Another item is I would ask everyone to show courtesy and respect, the same courtesy and respect that they would expect when they're talking. And if anybody can't live with those rules, we're going to ask the deputy in the back of the room if he would escort that person from the room. Okay? We're not here to get into a squabble. We're here to exchange information. Okay. With all that being said, I'd ask Mr. Paul Marone, if you would, Paul, if you would make your presentation, and I would ask you, if you would, to jot down your questions, write them down on a piece of paper, and hold them until he's completely finished. And then you'll have ample opportunity to ask questions or whatever. Make your presentation, okay? Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Loren. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Paul Marone. I represent the owners and developers of the property. And I guess I'd like to start with making sure that everybody is oriented as to exactly where the property is. I know everybody has a good idea, but I think it's worth going through. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry, the front one. Sorry, skilled me.
No, that's fine. Thank you. But orienting everyone as to exactly where we are and where we are in relation to some other landmarks in the area. So this is an aerial of the area in question. We have 1077 to the west. This is the roundabout at Ochsner Boulevard. I-12 is here. The existing Medline facility is here along I-12 on the southeast side of I-12. So to give you a point of reference, what we have here is the boundaries of the site and the building identified in. Now, there have been some discussions about the building and the size of the building. Ms. Brister again gave those square footages at the beginning, but I'll reiterate them now. The intent is to build an 800,000 square foot facility, distribution facility. What you see here is that 800,000 square foot facility. Now, there is the possibility of expansion in the future to as much as 1 million square feet. That expansion is not planned. It would depend on growth. Even in the best case scenario, we're probably looking at about a 10-year period. So that is the reason that you see on the aerial here, the 800,000 square foot facility. I'll do my best when I start talking about some of the details to let you know whether or not I'm talking about the facility at 800,000 square feet or whether I'm talking about the facility at full build-out, because obviously there are some differences there. So to the extent that I give you information and it's unclear to you as to, look, are you talking about the day they open? Are you talking about 10, 12, 15 years down the road? Please feel free to ask me. If I talk too fast or I say something that doesn't make sense, please interrupt me and ask me to repeat it. As Mr. Lawrence said, the purpose of the meeting tonight is really to get information out, good, bad, or indifferent. We may all have different opinions about the information, but I do think it's important, and I think it's good for everybody involved that at least we're working off of accurate information. So again, this is the facility. It fronts I-12. The first landmark, if we go from the roundabout at Ochsner Boulevard, the building right now, the closest point of the building is about 1,100 feet to the southwest of the roundabout. So that is a point that will be access off the roundabout that will come down and will access the site which fronts I-12. To give you an idea of the distance of the facility from Maison du Lac, from the corner of Maison du Lac, the closest point of that subdivision to the closest point of the building is about a half a mile. It's about 2,498 feet. So those distances are identified here. From our west side, we've taken a shot from the edge of the Shady Lakes community to the closest point of our building. That point is about just over 1,500 feet. So as you'll see, that corner of Shady Lakes is here. We attached the distance measure to the corner of the building there with additional green space along the west side of the building, which I'll also talk about in a minute. So again, the facility fronts I-12. It is south of what will be the connector road that will take Ochsner Boulevard's roundabout and connect it to 1077. And that gives you a sense of where it's located. There has been some comment and concern about its proximity to some of the residential developments, and so I thought it was important to at least get the facts out there as to what those distances are. And those are the closest points, or these are some of the points that we thought would be illustrative, and so we thought it wise to provide those. Let's zoom in a little bit on the site, if you will. So, take it down. Thank you. Okay, so what you're seeing now, and there'll be an opportunity to look at those. I know those of you in the back can't see the fine detail, but we'll wait around a while so that you have a chance to look at these. But this is a zoomed-in shot of what you just saw. So now we're bringing it in close so we can see what the site itself looks like. And what you see is a number of buffers. So on the east side, there is a 210-foot buffer. It narrows as you go north. It extends even greater as you go south toward I-12. The building at this location is about 475 feet from the property line. Along I-12, there is a 60-foot buffer here. That buffer grows to 134 feet here and here. The intent is to leave those buffers in their natural state and not to disturb them unless it's needed for drainage or for grading purposes. As we go to the west side, the building is about 846 feet from our western boundary. There is a buffer of approximately 700 feet. I say approximately because, as you see, there's an access roadway in here. This distance from here to that point is 687 feet. So I think a fair assessment is there's about a 700-foot buffer in this area. Now, the only place that this site will abut the extension road is in this area here. And as you see, there's about 150 to 160-foot buffer off of the right-of-way of the extension road to this point before you get into the first roadway. The building itself is even set back further than that. So the intent was to tuck the building against the interstate and to buffer it as much as we possibly could. And so that's what you see here. The green space. So on this plan that you see here, the site, there is approximately 26.41 acres of green space out of the entire site. That's on the 800,000 square foot building. If the building is expanded, then the green space would be 18.24 acres. In the same configuration. In other words, the buffers here do not change. The buffers here do not change along the east side. The expansion, as you might imagine, would be in this area here. So this buffer doesn't change. The only change would be on the western side at that point. Yes, sir?
Where are the trucks?
Where are the trucks?
Yeah, where will they be? Wait a minute now, let's let him finish and we'll get,
I'm going to get to that. Good question, and I'm getting to that.
just hold it if you will.
Yes, sir. So, okay, so let's talk about the trucks. Good timing on your question. Again, the way the facility is set up is there will be truck bays on the north and the south side of the facility, okay? So the trucks will be able to come in and they'll access from both sides. Let's talk about the number of trucks. So, well, let me back up. Let me give you a frame of reference on the timing. So if the project is approved and if the project is constructed, we would anticipate the construction would begin sometime in perhaps the early part of next year. So we would not expect the facility to be completed and to actually be open for business until probably approximately June or mid-2021. So there's about a year of construction, and then there's some outfitting and things of that nature that would need to be done. So if everything went smoothly from our perspective, the facility would be operational in or around mid-2021. So at that point, we would expect that the facility would generate about 50 to 60 trips, truck trips, okay? Let's project that out. And again, there are those that would suggest that we should not project out necessarily, because what I'm going to give you now are our estimations. But I know that it's an area of concern, and we want to try to give you the best information that we can. But when I tell you the exact truck trips that are going to exist 5 years after we open, I hope you can understand that if I miss that number by a little bit, that it's not purposeful, it is an estimate, but Medline is a company with a long track record. And so we feel that these numbers are good numbers that we can give you and that they're representative of what will be there. So let's take it out 5 years. Let's take it out to about 2024, 2025. So those 50 to 60 trips will grow to about 100 trips. So let's take it out from there about another 5 years. So now we're 10 to 11 years out. We are 2029, 2030 time frame. Now these numbers, the numbers I'm going to give you now, are assuming that the 200,000 square foot addition is built and that it's at full capacity, okay? So again, there is no plan to do that at this point in time. But there is room to do that, and if business was such that it could accommodate that, then that would be a possibility. At that point, then we would reach the 170 trips that has been shared with you before. So that number comes only if the additional 200,000 square feet is added, and only if that building at that time is at full utilization. At the time the building is going to be opened, it will not be at full utilization, even at the 800,000 square feet. There is a good bit of the building that will not be utilized at that point, and growth will have to take place to get to those numbers. But in fairness, we want to provide you with that information so that you can be aware of that. Let's talk about the 170 trips. There's some factors that I think are important for everybody to understand. I know that when the community, the commission, the staff, anybody hears 800,000 square feet or 170 trips, it's alarming. But respectfully, we've got to put that into context. I ask you to put that into context. And here's what I mean by that. There is a concern that at those 170 trips, which I'll get into more detail about this, but are off-peak and over a 24-hour period, that it will exacerbate existing traffic problems. It will make traffic problems that we already have on Highway 21 and 1077 much, much worse. I understand that concern, and I understand that belief. But you've got to recognize that at 170 trips per day, that is less than 1% of the current, today, not in 10 years, not in 12 years, today, the current traffic volume that travels Highway 21 in a 24-hour period, and Highway 1077 in a 24-hour period. So my point is, right now, there are over 28,000 cars that travel Highway 21 in this area in a 24-hour period. There's approximately 17,000 cars or vehicles, better said, vehicles, some of those are trucks, that travel Highway 1077 in a 24-hour period. We're talking about 170 trips in 10 to 12 years from now on those roadways. So I think it's important to consider the context when we talk about those numbers. The trips themselves, we've said this a number of times, and I know you've probably heard it or the information's been shared with you, but the trips are off-peak. So what does that mean? So we all know, those of us that live here, that if you're traveling any of our major thoroughfares between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening, give or take, some days it could be better or worse than others, but those are certainly times where the traffic can be a problem. And so when I say off-peak, I mean the trips generated, be it employee or deliveries, inbound or outbound, are not during peak times. The outbound, the delivery-bound trucks will leave the facility before the peak period. Most of those will be out by 5 o'clock in the morning. The reason for that, being a medical distributor, they are distributing to hospitals and facilities of that nature. There are requirements that they be there early for those deliveries. So though the inbound will be in the afternoons, but they will not be at peak. The employees are shift employees, and Medline does not have any shifts that begin or end during those peak hours that I just gave you. They specifically avoid those peak points. So you will not have employees coming in or going out, and you will not have meaningful deliveries coming in or going out. All of the trucks that Medline utilizes are owned by Medline. They're part of the Medline fleet. The drivers of those trucks are employees of Medline. They are state-of-the-art vehicles, between 1 and 4 years old, I believe, generally speaking. And they are kept in top shape. Also, those trucks, the routes that those trucks take are dictated by Medline. They are computer guided, and so the route that they will take to and from this facility can and would be dictated by Medline. Let's talk about the routes just a moment. And I'm going to give you what we believe are the likely and most reasonable routes that you would take to and from the facility. Inbound traffic. It is our belief that the inbound trips will, by and large, I can't tell you that every single one of them will, but by and large will go to Highway 1077. They will exit Highway 1077, and then they will have a dedicated turn lane, decel lane, to bring it onto Ochsner Boulevard Extension, which will take it to the facility. The reason I say that is because if you looked at the options, you know the options, you live in the area, so I'm not telling you something you don't already know. If I asked you, what would be the easiest route for you to get to the facility, most of you would say it would be easier to get off at 1077, make that immediate right, and get on Ochsner Boulevard, I think. And we believe that is the most logical route. As far as outbound will largely be dictated, for the most part, by the destination of the delivery. So if the delivery is going west, the outbound that truck might go to 1077 and out. If the outbound is going east, it may go to 21. That's not to say that westbound trips will not go to 21 and come out, because of course at 21 and the existing Ochsner, you have the ability to make the right turn, and then if you're going westbound, you can get right on the interstate at that point. So that is certainly a viable option as well. But those are the routes that we envision the trucks likely taking. With regards to traffic, as I said, with the number of trips and trying to put some perspective to it, I would ask that you also consider, when we talk about traffic from this acreage, I think it's fair to ask you to consider what the current zoning allows. And the current zoning of the property is PBC2. PBC2 allows high-rise office buildings. It allows all associated uses, including commercial uses. It allows campuses, educational campuses, things of that nature. So if this facility, if we're not here and this was developed under PBC2, the question that we had as the development team and the team of the owner, what traffic is generated by that type of development on this very same property? And I can tell you that that study came back and told us that the traffic generated by a PBC2 project on 90 acres is about 4 to 5 times more than the traffic that would be generated by this facility. In addition, while the traffic generated from this facility, as I've already talked about, is off-peak, which means that it's not the times that we see the most congestion, the planned business campus traffic is peak traffic. That is traffic, people coming in the morning and leaving in the afternoon. So I think I would ask you to at least consider that when you consider the other information that we're giving you this evening. I'll touch briefly on drainage. As Mr. Lauren mentioned, there are other venues, and drainage really becomes an issue at a building permit stage or other stages in the process perhaps, but we do have information on that, and so I want to share it with you. Most of our developments here in St. Tammany Parish, as you all know, well, they all have to have some type of retention, right? And so as we drive around, we see these ponds. Might be in front of, it might be in a residential development. It might be in front of some of the commercial developments that you see around, but we're required by parish ordinance to capture the runoff on the site and to meter it out so that there is less runoff after the development than before. So what's different about this particular site is that you do not see any ponds on the site, okay? So those of you that watch these developments, are involved in any of this, may be asking, well, where are you going to retain the water on a site that is developed in this nature? The Weiner family, for this entire property, and if you look at the map over there, you will see there's the orange area, the light and the dark, are part of the Wayner Holdings. There are additional properties moving to the east back toward Highway 21 that are already developed that were part of their tracks. So what they decided to do a very long time ago was to have regional detention for everything that they have and they're going to do out there. So they already have existing retention ponds in place. They have an additional 109 acre-feet of storage in those ponds today, over and above what is required for what has already been built out there. And that's additional capacity that they've created to be able to handle the drainage and runoff from this site and their other property. So Medline is obligated to drain to those ponds. That's how those ponds start along our eastern boundary. Again, they're there now. There is that 109 acre-feet of additional capacity currently. So there is currently enough capacity in those ponds to handle the drainage and the runoff from Medline's facility. However, the Wayners are in the process of adding an additional 25 acre-feet to that capacity. So after all of the property is built out, not just Medline, but all of the property that the Wayners have is built out, they will still have excess capacity so that they will exceed the 25% reduction in runoff that the parish requires. That's a mouthful about a complicated subject, I know. And so admittedly, I'm just touching on that, but I did want to let you know that that is something that we are keenly aware of, and that there is a plan for handling it, and that's a plan that has been in the works for a very long time, well before Medline had an interest in this property. I think that is, excuse me one second. Thank you. Okay. Another point that I forgot to make when we were talking about the trips generated from here. The trips that are generated from the site, I talked about the routes they would take, and it was probably implicit, but I don't need to be implicit, I need to be explicit. So Mr. Wayner just reminded me of that. Those trips are all going from this site to the interstate, except for one. There is one that is going north. And Medline delivers to St. Tammany Parish Hospital, and they have been delivering to St. Tammany Parish Hospital for some time, and they deliver to the hospital from Medline's existing facility. So that will continue, and they will continue. They use Highway 21 now. That delivery has to be in, I believe, by 5 a.m., and so they will continue to make that delivery as they always have. So that truck will be going north. Other than that truck, no other trucks will be going north. Also, one more point. The deliveries to Medline. So there are going to be deliveries that come into Medline of product. The vast, vast majority of those deliveries are FedEx deliveries. So those deliveries, as you probably know, there is a large FedEx distribution facility located Highway 1077 north in the North Point Business Park. So the deliveries coming from FedEx will likely be coming directly from that facility. That's what we would expect. Those are the vast majority of the deliveries that come in, and those deliveries come in a variety of vehicles. You can pretty much look at the fleet that FedEx has, everything from large 18-wheelers down to their vans and things of that nature. So those are the types of deliveries that would come in.
Can you just distinguish why we're talking about trips and not trucks?
Yeah. So what Bruce asked is that I try to clarify why we're talking about trips and not trucks. And the reason is because a truck is coming in and going out, okay? And when we were saying there are 175 trucks, while that's true, but it's actually half that number of trucks. It's because a truck is coming in and coming out. And so it's really more accurate to talk about the trips. that are coming in and coming out. Though, and rather than suggesting that it's going to be 170 trucks, that's not the case. Whether it's the 50 at the outset, it's the trips that are being generated that I think are most important, and that's why I made the distinction between trips and trucks. Yeah. 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 So again, the St. Tammany Hospital delivery will continue to use Highway 21. So it will go, they will go to the roundabout, they will go east to Highway 21 and north, just like they do now. They will not be utilizing Ochsner Extension to 1085 and over. They'll continue to utilize Highway 21. Mind if I-
You finished?
Yes.
He's gonna take, you want
Mind
to
if I take questions?
All right.
You take some questions.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all are okay with that.
What we've asked, those of us that have,
It's on.
okay, those of us that have sat through some of these before, these community meetings, a lot of times will result in 15 people getting up saying the same thing, okay? So what we've asked a couple of people to do is to kind of be the lead person, to get a spokesperson to talk for the group. And I understand you all have the doctor to be one person. So I'd let him, if you would, lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Lauren. Thank you, Paul. Oh, I got to get over here. First thing, there is going to be more than one person that is going to speak. I'm certainly going to be that person, but we do have some other.
I understand that.
We're not going to have 30 of us, but we are going to have more than one. What I would like to do right now is offer up the opportunity for Mr. Davis to come up. He has something that he would like to say before we get into some of the questions for the development group. So, Mr. Davis, if you want to come up here, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself for some people who didn't see me the last time that I was at this meeting. My name is Al Davis, or Alvin Davis. I spent 41 years doing industrial real estate for Latter & Blum. I was the senior vice president of Latter & Blum's industrial department and helped develop Elmwood Industrial Park. Probably 33% of what happened in Elmwood Industrial Park, I did.
The mic in your hand.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm proud, and I'm not trying to be boorish, but I have a street named after me in Elmwood Industrial Park. There's a lot of things that have been going on concerning this development that I'm not happy with. I have been a member of the Society of Industrial Realtors for over 40 years. I was even president of the chapter of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Florida. I was on their board of directors. So I have credentials that show that I know industrial real estate. This project does not belong where residential properties exist. You don't mix oil and water. It just doesn't go. The size of this development is supposedly 900,000, 90,000, 100,000. What is it going to be? They're proposing one spot, one size rather, and if they expand, it's going to be larger. We just heard that the trucks will only be 175 trucks or deliveries a day. Are they going to have cross-docking there? Where are these trucks going to be marshaled? Where is the truck repair facility going to be? All of these things are not being discussed. Traffic is not the only thing with trucks. I presume that the employees will walk to work. It's absurd to say that they're only going to have 35 or 40 employees. If their business increases, they're going to hire more people. It's quite evident that that's going to happen. I don't plan on seeing these people walking the streets going to work. This is a great development. It's wonderful for the parish, but it's in the wrong location. If Medline would like my services for $1, I will help them. I left Metairie because I wanted to go back to my roots where I grew up in Opelousas, to come back over here to see the country, the trees, the birds, and nice people. And now the calamity of New Orleans seems to be following me. This is not the right development. The Wayners are wonderful people. Mr. Wayner's father and I were friends. They're great in real estate, but primarily in retail and residential. I don't think that they really belong in this type of thing because it is a whole different new world. Industrial real estate is important. Everybody looks at it and poo-poos it. Listen to me. This wood came out of an industrial project. Your clothes came out of an industrial project. This building came out of an industrial project. Everything that you do comes out of an industrial warehouse or factory. I have done most of those things in my lifetime. I retired a year and a half ago. I'm still training kids from Ladder and Blum that come to my house because I love what I was doing then and I love what I'm doing now. But I oppose this project not on my behalf, but on behalf of all of these citizens that are out here that don't want to hear this noise that's going to come about. At the last meeting, I said that I heard, we will hear the noise. And the attorney jumped up after me and said, you won't hear it. Well, look, I have hearing aids. This is from 90-millimeter guns in a war way before Vietnam, okay? I lay in bed at night and I hear trucks on I-12 now. What is it going to be later? I beg of you, sitting on these chairs representing us, that you please listen to the people you swore allegiance to and not to campaign contributions. Thank you.
I'm not really sure how you follow that one up, but I'm going to try. So I do have a couple questions. I'll direct those to Medline first. The development group, we've spoken extensively. I don't want to take up that amount of time right now. So some of the questions that I have for Medline, can you speak a little bit about the employees that you plan to employ? I guess would be the first thing to go, and we can just kind of go back and forth. I mean, I have questions back and forth, so does that seem? I don't want to bombard you with a bunch at one time. I just would like to.
Brian, would it be helpful for him to present the larger thing and then we can?
That's fine. That's fine. I think what we're going to do is they'll present something, and maybe that'll answer some of the questions and get some of the information. Then from there, we'll go ahead and do that. That's suitable. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Is that okay? Thank you very much. Mr. Davis, you're hired. Yes, and thank you for your service. For $2. My name is Dimitri Dukin. I'm Vice President of Real Estate Facilities for Medline Industries. First of all, I'd like to say on behalf of Medline Industries, who've been here in the parish for 15 years and grown from 0 to 50 employees and 200,000 square foot facility that we own, and doing over $100 million in business in the state. Thank you very much to the parish for our home for the last 15 years. We are excited to offer this $60 million investment. It's owned free and clear by Medline Industries. We're a family-owned, fourth-generation company based out of Chicago, started in 1910. We are the 100th best healthcare company to work in the United States. It's very unusual for us to have these meetings. Usually people are very happy to see us. And I wish certainly that after what we have to say, some of you may change your mind, and I understand that some of you won't. We are not a tenant, we're the owners. We plan on being here. We've been here for 15 years. We'd like to be here for 50 more years. We love the parish. We love our 50 employees, and would like to, Mr. Davis, you asked about our employees. They'll not be walking here. They'll be driving, and we hope to be about 250 of them, of employees. Of those 250 employees, it will be warehouse associates, customer service, finance, accounting, sales, truck drivers, management supervisors, and so forth. This facility will have over 60,000 square feet of office space as well. And at 800,000 square feet, it's 400% larger than our current facility. Why would we do that? Well, 15 years ago, we thought 200,000 square feet was max, and it's very expensive and practical, and it's really, really tough to move. So we would like to make sure we never move, and we're here for the next 50, 100 years, if we can help it. We are their top healthcare provider, distributor, manufacturer, customer service operator in the United States. We provide full spectrum of care, from hospital birth to hospice. We take our job extremely seriously. We're at the heart of healthcare. We want our employees, our customers, and our community to be proud of us, not upset with us. We're here to do everything we can to go above and beyond on this facility. It will be LEED certified, state-of-the-art, the most environmentally friendly distribution center in the state of Louisiana. It will have 50% coverage on solar. We will have trucks. We're a distribution company. There's no manufacturing done on this site. There's no assembly. There's no truck repairs, and we'll agree to restrict any kind of use to, we repair and finish our trucks through Penske. So the Penske comes in, picks the trucks, and takes them out, or we leave them at the facility. There's no, these are medical-grade, hospital-grade facilities. Everything we do is the next day. If someone has a surgery tomorrow, we distribute today. And sometimes it's within 6 to 8 hours of the surgery. We provide over 500,000 types of supplies to a hospital, everything but pharmaceuticals. So hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, these are our customers. About 10% of our today's volume is in the air. Our trucks are here today already, our vans, our cars. Over the next 20 years, most of our trucks are going to be electric. As you guys know, you see Amazon, Target, Walmart, everybody else. That is the trend. That's what's happening. Not today. Today, our trucks are mostly between 1 and 4 years old. These are single-axle, state-of-the-art trucks that are extremely environmentally friendly and very quiet. You could stand 5 feet from our facility and not hear a single thing. Mr. Davis, I'll invite you to our facility with your hearing aid, stay 5 feet from our building, and tell me if you can hear anything that is going inside that building. Yes, we have our trucks in the docks that are picking the product, but all that activity is happening inside the building, not outside the building. There is no loading outside of our 4 walls. So with questions about employees, today we have 50 employees. By the time this is done, we're going to turn this facility from a local distribution center strictly for this small region to a facility that will distribute into Florida, into all of Louisiana and Mississippi. It will be 800,000 square feet. Day one, we'll probably utilize 300,000 to 400,000 square feet, and we hope that for the next 10, 15, 20 years to utilize the rest of the site. We're building for growth, and we're building for the long term. We commit to you to do whatever we can to minimize our impact. Obviously, this is not going to be a residential development or major office development. This is a light industrial site. And we love, with all due respect, the location. It's right on I-12. It's exactly where we've been for the last 15 years. It's right next to the 2 ramps. We see the future over the next 10, 15, 20 years is going trucks electric, much smaller vehicles instead of semi-trucks, going to straight trucks. And we think we're going to fit in the community very well long term. Obviously, we have to be given a chance. I see some of you saying, no chance. I see that. I get that. But we appreciate that you keep open mind. I will stay here for as long as I need to, answer all of your questions. And I guarantee you that at the end of the day, Medline will make you proud. We're the company behind healthcare. Everything we do is for the healthcare in the United States. We've been around for 100 years. We'll be around for 100 more. And I'm here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Dimitri, so when you chose this site, when your group looked at this site, were there any other sites that you were able to look at? And can you speak about those and maybe why you have settled on this opportunity?
Thank you very much. We've looked at many sites. Obviously, when you're making a $60 million investment, you don't make it lightly. We've looked at sites in Louisiana. We've looked at sites at Mississippi. We've looked at sites of what our potential customers will need over the next 50 years, not the next 5. And after months and months of research, we came to realize that we love the parish, we love this location, we love the fact that this is a phenomenal environment for our employees with all the amenities, and we'd like to continue growing the parish. We did determine that in the parish, that is the only site that would work for us, given our requirements of healthcare. We do need to be right on the exit. It requires certain information in terms of where we need to be, safety, security. We own it free and clear, long-term value preservation, access for our employees today, access for our employees in the future, ability to grow, and ability to service our customers, both in the parish, outside the parish, in New Orleans, and obviously access into nearby states, Mississippi, Florida, Arkansas, and so forth. We can go back and forth in terms of, hey, you could be, in another locations. You can be in Slidell, you could be in Hammond, you could be in Baton Rouge, you can be anywhere else. For various internal reasons, this site obviously works for us. I personally obviously did not anticipate, in all honesty, and I want to be 100% honest, that it would have this reaction. But we commit that whatever we can do in terms of shielding, anything we need to do to make this work for the requirements in the community, we will do above and beyond. So, thank you.
I think maybe one thing to consider too is how close will the other sites in St. Tammany be to residents? And I think that's a concern. So, I live in development groups, knows this. I'm 1,500 feet from, I'm in the Shady Lake Estates area. So while you may shield sound and whatnot, there's other impacts that you will have to that area. Why not look at an area that is sparsely populated? There are other sites that may be more appropriate for that maybe there's no residents or the impact is going to be much, much less. Clearly, you can see it's going to impact residents. I mean, obviously, you can see that. So while we may say we want you in St. Tammany, there may be a better spot to go. Okay, so so Yeah, I mean, there's a lot here. There's some other sites that are further east that it's not even close to the number of subdivisions. So I would ask you to maybe talk about that a little bit and consider that.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, did you help with the site selection process here? This is sophisticated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. What I could tell you is we have a very specific site search criteria. We own over 35 million square feet of space, over 160 sites worldwide. We own 90% of that space. And the site search criteria is very specific of our ability to get to the center of our customers from any point of location. In terms of being able to provide just-in-time delivery to hospitals, to clinics, to doctors, and so forth. So we've run multiple models in terms of what's the best location, multiple points of entry on the highway, multiple backup facilities to a location that we are, proximity to our team members today and the future customers, and various models. In St. Tammany, that is the only location we selected. There are other parishes that we looked at that have sites that would qualify for something like this, but in St. Tammany, it's the only one that worked for us in our criteria. I don't want to go into the detail as to why this versus that or that, but in St. Tammany, I could tell you that after exhaustive research and internal discussions and so forth, the current facility works the best for our needs.
Hi, I'm Ryan, the other half of Ryan right now. So he and I had been asked by people from many, many of the subdivisions that you can see on this map, which I didn't do this map, I just said thank you on behalf of the people who did it. You see the number of subdivisions that are impacted by this off-peak truck traffic, which will be just when someone's gotten to sleep at night, and the next 10 minutes, the next truck will come and wake them up. So this map helps you see just what a bad site this is for a rezoning request to change a planned business campus zoning to advanced manufacturing and logistics. And I have a couple questions about that. I know that Paul is very familiar with 15 uses available in AM&L. And so we have some questions about the amount of property being requested for the rezoning. At the September 3rd hearing, the amount requested was 90 acres. Now, it appears, and this is from an email sent by Josh Wayner to the residents of Maison du Lac, it appears that Medline is purchasing the 67 point some acres. On the map sent with that email, the designation of the subdivision tract number was not on the map approved by the Planning Commission in July as one of the 5 tracts. So question there would be, when were you planning to go back and get that tract approved so you could sell it? Because Dimitri can't buy and own something that hasn't been approved as a separate tract. So that's part of the question for Paul. And part of that question is also, if you don't buy all the 90 acres, but you go through with rezoning for 90 acres of AM&L, then you could have a garment factory, you could have a, paint factory, plastics, pesticides, all within that zoning. So we really need to know, we're talking about getting the facts and figures correct. This was the original area. So it's kind of like, well, we need to know what are you actually buying or proposing to buy. To those questions, this land, as I understand it, cannot, surely Medline, you guys aren't going to pay, was it $60 million for land unless you've been cleared for the 404 permit under the wetlands. And I can tell you, frankly, I'm doing everything I can right now to get that held up by writing to the Corps. And even though we were not given notice within the 20-day comment period in July that the wetlands permit had been applied for, we have the word from the Corps in writing, thanks to Mr. Ouellette, that they will continue to accept our objections to permitting and concreting over up to 1 million square foot and covering up what is really a lot of wetlands, like over 60-some acres of wetlands. Now, I realize I just asked you a lot of questions, but that's what we're here for tonight, to ask questions, get answers, and then ask some more questions. And I want to say, when I grow up, I want to be Mr. Davis.
Okay. You can let me know if I miss any of them.
Okay.
But maybe we'll start with, let's start with what you started with, which is the site itself. So Nancy's correct. So the application that is before the parish is for 90 acres, and that 90 acres takes in this area here, and it takes in this pie-shaped piece here. So at the time that the application was made, which was very early on and before actually the purchase agreement was in place, you remember I talked about the detention requirement and the fact that you don't see any detention ponds on here. So when Medline initially got into this and we were in discussions about the purchase agreement, the idea was that they would need the 90 acres in order to provide for retention. When it became clear that they would not need the full 90 acres, and they can revise their site plan and continue to, to work on their exact site plan, that's what gave rise to this. So currently this is in the application, although we would have no objection to removing that from the request. That's not going to be needed by Medline because of the retention being handled off-site, and so we would have no objection to removing that from the request, so that the only parcel being rezoned would be the tract that you see here that Medline would acquire. With regards to the wetlands, there are wetlands on site. There is a 404 application in. I'm not sure beyond that what else we can say other than, as you know, and as many people here in the public know, that is a detailed process through the Corps of Engineers. We also know that particularly in this area, wetlands are created for a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons that wetlands are created is because the United States government built a dam not too long ago, relatively speaking. That dam is I-12. And so as water doesn't flow because of that area as well as it used to, a lot of that water sits and it has resulted in wetlands there. If a wetlands permit is issued by the Corps, which again, that's in the purview of the Corps, we have made the request for that, we would have to mitigate each of those wetlands. The Wayner family have a mitigation bank here in St. Tammany Parish, so that there would be, for each acre of wetlands that is permitted, there would have to be additional acres of wetlands within St. Tammany Parish that would be preserved as part of the Corps' mitigation requirement. So yes, we are in that process, and if in fact a permit is issued, then mitigation would be required, and we would satisfy that mitigation requirement right here in St. Tammany Parish. Is that anything else I missed?
Very thorough. Let me ask about the parcel 7A1 through AD on the map. Is that, so you're saying this was taken out, is this 67 point something acres?
It would be, what you see is the site. Excuse me. So yeah, so 7A1AD would be basically this entire, it would be what you see here is the Medline site and also this pie-shaped piece. That right now is 7A1AD. So you're correct. If in fact this is the only site that would have to be sold to Medline, then there would have to be a re-subdivision to create this tract, 7A1AD1 and 7A1AD2 there. So there would have to be a subsequent re-subdivision of that larger tract to create the tract to be purchased.
Okay, and then that would have to go through the Planning Commission.
That would have to go through the planning, yes.
Okay, so would that not mean that you would have to go back to the Planning Commission before coming to the Zoning Commission in October?
No.
And why is that?
Why would we need to do that? I don't follow that. In other words, let me...
Yeah, well, okay, let me clarify my question. You have to have partitioned off that as a separate property in order to sell it, correct?
Correct.
So you have to go through the re-subdivision process in order to do that?
Before sale.
Before sale. So then you have to be able to satisfy the prospective purchaser that all would go well with that.
That would have to be taken care of before the sale, yes.
Right, okay, okay. Let me ask a few questions here. Also in Josh Wayner's email to Maison du Lac residents, you referenced the traffic study, and we would like to know who performed that traffic study. Were those people traffic engineers? What date was the study done? And what area did that traffic study cover? Highway.
The traffic study he was referring to was done by Kelly J. McHugh and Associates, who is a traffic engineer, was completed within the last, I would say, 30 to 45 days. It was not a traffic impact analysis that we typically see. It was a study to determine the numbers that I gave you earlier. When I mentioned to you that the planned business campus 2 would generate 4 to 5 times more traffic than this facility would generate, that was the study. It was an analysis of the trips generated by this site versus the trips that would be generated under a development of PBC 2.
And when that study was done, were the other potential new projects along this Auctioner extension included?
No, because it was not a traffic impact analysis. In other words, your typical traffic impact analysis goes beyond trip generations, right? I mean, it takes into account existing traffic. It takes into account timing at intersections and things of that nature. That will have to be done as part of this project before a building permit could ever be procured. That's not what was done here. In other words, what was done here was analysis to try to determine the trip generation, the impact difference between this development and a PBC2 development on the same parcel.
Okay, so it was an estimate, in other words. Okay, so what did you use as your definition of peak hours? What were the time frames for the peak hours? Were they 7 to 9 and 4 to 6? Okay, so let me ask this. Anybody go to Hannon High School, have kids at Hannon High School? Okay, what time do they get out of school? 2:30. That was not in your peak hours estimate. Okay, so what happens from this to-be-built connector road? Your traffic is going to leave. They're going to go up the connector road. They're going to have to turn right onto 1077 because there will be a concrete barricade, according to parish traffic engineer, making it impossible for them to turn left. So they will turn right. They will go to the roundabout at Hannon High School. All Hannon High School people, okay, you can show that map over here. They will have to go to this roundabout, then go around the roundabout and go back up to 1077 to get onto the interstate. That is not going to do you any favors. I will show you a picture taken today, South 1077. So what happens, and I'm happy to pass these around and thank the gentleman who provided these. When you are trying to get just from Hannon High School at the roundabout at 1085 on 1077 towards the 12, which all your trucks would have to do the same traffic to go to the roundabout, to come back around, get on the 1077, that is a nightmare. Then, Ms. Brister, and I want to thank Pat Brister for coming here this evening and speaking. She's talking about safety. She's talking about public safety, the safety of each and every one of you driving. If you're on the I-12, and I have a picture of that, if you're on the I-12 and you're going towards Baton Rouge and you want to get off on 1077, where your trucks are going to be getting off on 1077, the traffic already backs up onto the interstate. You have to back up on the interstate waiting to try. Everybody who's been there knows what that is like. Trying to get off. Your truck drivers are going to face a nightmare. And it's not just your truck drivers. I want them to be safe too. We were talking about especially high school students in those 2 to 4 o'clock. That's when the school zones are. Those aren't those peak traffic hours that you've been working into your numbers. So just think about that when your kids are out there trying to get out of Hannon High School or you're trying to go and pick them up. It is a traffic nightmare. Couple more questions, and Ryan will have the rest. Sure.
So again, I think it's important to note that whether it's 3 o'clock or 2:30, 70% or more of the vehicles, the trucks that we're talking about here, the trips that we're talking about here, are going to be nowhere near those time frames. So, well, I mean, we can control the timing of our trucks, and 70% of those trucks are leaving in the early morning hours. The vast majority are leaving in the early morning hours, and the outbound trucks are going to be leaving equally off-peak. Now, that's not to say that there can't be some that are going to be leaving during that time frame, but again, the numbers that we're talking about at 50 trucks over 24 hours initially, and even at 10 or 12 years from now, those numbers over that time frame off of the peak hours, I would disagree with the impact there. Respectfully.
Okay, thank you. Let me, I don't want to spend all my time up here. I know there's some other people who had questions, but I must respond to the off-peak hours things based on what Mr. Davis said. Off-peak hours, when it's these trucks going down when you're trying to sleep, there's never off-peak. I live off Highway 21, and when that road was widened, that was never quiet. That was terribly noisy. So let me ask about alternative sites. Just touch on that one more time. In terms of the...
Let's not duplicate the questions, and if we can...
This is a new question.
I've been kind of quiet for a while up here. Let's ask a question and give the gentleman an opportunity to respond instead of asking 15 questions. And
I understand, Mr. Lauren. I understand. It's just that Paul is so smart. I know he remembers all the questions.
Well, I don't.
Oh. I'm sorry. I apologize.
If she wants to make a presentation, that's one thing. She's asking questions.
Okay, I'm asking questions that we gathered from a lot of people, and so these aren't just my questions. These were collected from neighborhood. I'll see all these neighborhoods up here. We put them together to try to facilitate the ease of the Q&A. That was on Mr. Lauren's advice. We took your advice. We put together the list. Okay. I want to talk about tax incentives. Okay, alternative sites, but let me ask about tax incentives first, and Ryan will take over. Okay, what I'd like to know is if there have been any discussions with any of the pertinent bodies, whether it's Tammany Court, whether it's a parish, about offering anything like a pilot payment in lieu of taxes, any other tax breaks, concessions for Medline to locate on the proposed site.
Thank you, ma'am. I do want to point out that we're here to talk about zoning and site selection, not incentives, but I will address that. Obviously, it's a competitive process, and we are seeking eligible incentives for the value of the project that is above and beyond what's created today. So for the value of the 200,000 square foot building and the 50 jobs that we created today, there are no incentives. For the value of the new jobs that we create over the next 3 to 5 years, there are available legislative incentives that we can apply for in this parish.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would say, yes, we are here to talk about zoning, but we're also here to get a full information about the process and what is actually being pursued. And I think that since every single person who sits in this room pays taxes and is looking at having their property values devalued as a result of this development, I think that asking about what tax incentives could be offered is a very relevant question. Thank you. Okay, and alternative sites, Brian, do you want to talk about? If you want to handle, I know you answered about alternative sites, but part of the reason we want to know about alternative sites is in terms of the wetlands process. That's a very important thing. So if you're saying that you answered that in your paperwork for the wetlands permit, I'll move on that one. But now I want to talk about safety from another angle, which is what fire district would be responsible for this location? Who knows the answer to that question? Paul? Medline?
It's the same as today.
Okay, and what is that?
What does it matter? It's the same as.
What does it matter? Wait, let me tell you what it matters. If it is the Goodby Fire Department, which is a Oh, okay, let me explain something. If it is the Goodby Fire Department, that is a volunteer fire department. Say, they are not, then you're saying we're going to put an 800,000 square foot warehouse, which is going to be full of stuff. There's stuff in there. So what if something catches on fire? What if a spark happens from a truck? Who responds to that emergency? So yes, it matters. It matters to anyone who lives in the area. So what is the answer?
Ma'am, I'll find out exactly which fire department is responsible for our facility. I do live in Chicago, so I don't want to give you the information that's wrong. But I could tell you that in the 15 years we've been here, we have not had a single incident. As part of this being a LEED certified facility, it has ESFR system in place that ensures that any kind of fire is put in seconds. It's a high pressure system over every single product. And we don't have any hazmat materials in this facility. There are no pharmaceuticals in this facility. So it's a medical grade facility, which by definition means that any kind of threat or risk of fire is minimized. It's not nothing, but it's dramatically minimized. We have not had a single incident in this facility.
Okay, well, I think that's very useful information and appreciated. And, okay, so I think the trucks? Oh, fire from the trucks, yes. There are all sorts of things that could happen. You have an accident and you've got to have the fire department. So yes, we appreciate that the medical grade facility is something that hasn't had a problem. But if you look at the, you're going to have the Goodby Fire Department coming, trying to get down 1077 when maybe a car catches on fire, that also plays into who is responsible for the fire safety of the area. Let's see, we had some questions about lighting pollution and whether there would be lighting on the connector road. That's probably a traffic engineer question.
We're getting far off the subject now. We're getting into, this is about what's the proper zoning, okay?
Yes.
And now we're getting into detailed planning.
I understand. May I just make one response to that? This is about zoning, but it is about the impact on the neighborhood and on people's lives if this zoning is changed. And if the zoning is changed to A, M, and L, that for this 67 acres, if it's Mr. Marone's going to reduce it from 90 to 67, then the area next to it, they can come back to the to the zoning commission and say, well, we've got AM and L here, so we can have AM and L on the rest of the 90 acres. So all of these questions really are important. I mean, they do have to do with
Ma'am,
zoning.
I understand that, but let's not get argumentative about it. We're here to exchange. Wait a minute.
Okay, stop.
Hold on a minute.
Y'all.
What is the purpose of the meeting? To get information that we didn't have at the first meeting, okay?
Yes, and Mr. Lauren, you're right. Well, stop.
Yes, ma'am. I'll let you finish. Now, let me have a moment. A comment was made earlier. No disparagement at all about people who run for political office. The four of us don't run for political office, okay? We're appointed by the parish council, just like you would be, okay? So we're not in this for any, there's nothing in this monetarily for any of us. We're not in that business, okay? what we're here to try to do is there was a lot of disparity between what you all were saying the other night at the zoning commission meeting and what the other side was saying. There was a lot of disparity. And the purpose of this meeting was to bring the information that they had and present it to you. Okay? When we start talking about, well, you might build something somewhere else, or you might do this, or you might do that, that's not the point. The point is, what is the proper zoning for this particular tract of land? And today, it's zoned commercial. It's zoned commercial. Whether you like it or not, it's zoned commercial.
I'm sorry, the reason I was shaking my head is because it's zoned planned business campus. And yes, that allows for commercial, but it's not zoned commercial, and I think that's what people were just responding
Well,
to.
It's not residential.
But that allows for residential, allows for mixed use. So, Mr. Lauren, first, may I just say something? I apologize for the comment made about, I don't remember who made it, but whoever said that about any implication that any of you were like officials looking for money. I apologize for that being said. You're volunteers, and I deeply appreciate that you volunteers. I haven't gotten a lick of my own work done in 3 weeks. I'm just volunteering here to try to work out what's best for all of the residents, the many hundreds of people whose lives will be impacted. And now I'm going to sit down.
Okay.
Are you happy?
Okay. You know, there are other people here that want to talk.
Yes, but you did ask us to gather all of our questions. I mean, the reason I have all these questions, and Dr. Green has them, is because you asked us to put everybody's, not everybody's, but you asked us to. Okay.
I see hands up all around the room, people that want to talk.
Okay, and may I pass the microphone to them? I didn't want to do it if I wasn't allowed to.
Sir, would you come up? You. Pardon? You want to say something?
Speak, and then I'd like to be recognized, please, since you've already acknowledged him.
My name is Charles Belsom, and I live in Village of Normandy Oaks. My first question is this, is how critical is the access to and from the site via Oshner Boulevard? And why I'm leading up to that, if we left Oshner Boulevard a no truck route, okay, then it would force them to go to 1077. I know what y'all going to say. It's crowded as it is right now. But we're also going to have a throughway, if that goes through, that will divert a lot of that traffic toward Oshner Boulevard. No trucks, but vehicles. And what is the possibility of taking 1085 where it crosses over I-12 and have that as access to and from, which would allow people who right now are going up 1077 could go to 1085 to where they really want to get to.
I think he already answered that. I think he already did. But anyway.
Let's see, I'll try to answer that as best I can. I think the question about 1085 is a good question. It's not something that I can answer, and I look at Jay, I'm not aware of any plans to put an interchange as 1085 goes over 12. Perhaps one day, but I'm not aware of anything, and if Mr. Watson's not, then I think that is not likely. While a good idea, and it would certainly be something that should happen, that'll be a federal government issue, I believe, on the interstate system, and unfortunately, there's no plans for that at this point. As far as how critical is the access to Oshner Boulevard, another very good question. And I would say that, and I'll ask Dimitri to correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously he will know better for his facility, but in our discussions, I think the ability, and I think he actually mentioned it earlier, the ability for the traffic to go both ways is important to them. So I think that is an important issue, that they have access both to Highway 21 and to Highway 1077. Want me to just?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Cindy Sheremy, and I live in Normandy Oaks. And I've noticed on the map, and I'm sure it was just an oversight, but our subdivision and the village of Normandy Oaks are not even on here, and we are much closer than Maison du Lac. So my question to you is, what is the distance to the Normandy Oak Village's edge, Avante and Brookstone, from this facility? Because we are right here. This is Normandy Oaks Boulevard. This is our subdivision. We are right across from where this is going to be. And my next question is, where are the retention ponds? Are you talking about the retention ponds that are already in the business complex that's going to be behind the villages of Normandy Oaks that are not being maintained, by the way, right now? Are those existing ponds the ones that are going to be used? And then the last thing is, we have heard from many, many trucking companies that they don't make left turns. So if they can't go down 1077 and do the roundabout and go all the way to 1085 to 21, they're going to come down Ochsner Boulevard in front of the Ochsner Medical Campus. The curves in that road are ridiculously sharp as it is. There are no shoulders on the road, and there's nowhere for even an emergency vehicle to get through if they would need to. So those are our big concerns, in addition to the noise and the off-peak traffic and peak traffic and extra traffic. I mean, those are all, we live here. We're not opposed to Medline. We would love for Medline to expand. But what about 1088 and I-12? That's a shovel-ready property.
I'll just, on the last item in 1088 and I-12, I'll just reiterate, which Dimitri said a couple of times, that that site is not a viable site given their criteria. And so with regards to the, first, the distance from this facility to the entrance of Village of Normandy Oaks is what I'm trying to get out, excuse me, is about 1,800 feet. So,
If it's 2,000 square feet to Maison du Lac, the lots before Maison du Lac.
now that's not to Avanti, that's to the entrance, correct me, that's to the entrance of Village, Normandy Village.
From the facility diagonal to the entrance of Normandy Oaks.
The Village of Normandy Oaks. So from here, running diagonally to the entrance of Village at Normandy Oaks. On Watercross Parkway. So, but if I could, let me finish those questions, and I'll be happy to try to answer yours. But if I'd like to finish hers. 1088, the distance, and the ponds was the last one I think you asked. Okay, so the ponds are located here, right along our eastern boundary. I mentioned that there are existing ponds there. Those are the ponds that I'm talking about. The additional 25 acre feet of expansion will take place here as well. It'll pick up some of the area that is north of those existing ponds. So those are the ponds that will be utilized to catch and retain that water.
And what about the left turn issue with trucks and having to use Ochsner Boulevard in front of the Ochsner campus?
Well,
where I'm going to get to
right. I think that that Ochsner Boulevard will be utilized. It will be utilized. Sure. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Dennis Ecker with Maison du Lac. I have a question regarding fueling. Will the gentleman that with Medline, you have a fueling site that's planned at Medline inside the facility?
No, sir. No, sir. Our trucks will be refueled at our national partner facilities with Penske. As they travel, we have a national agreement with Penske Logistics, and at various facilities, they stop by, get refueled, maintained, and return to the site. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Paul. My name is Michael Champagne. I live in Northridge Estate subdivision on Highway 1077. I don't want to duplicate what anybody else has said. I don't want to duplicate what anybody else has said, but the lady mentioned the the traffic. Now, you introduced just earlier that FedEx is going to be involved in this delivery process. Has anyone ever seen what it looks like when the FedEx fleet leaves that facility in the morning? It's like a train coming through there, and they jam up the traffic circle. It's going to it's a little part that was kind of not mentioned earlier. Now, during the construction of this facility, without the benefit of this still unapproved roadway along I-12, where's all this construction equipment and materials going to travel to get to that site? And then my third comment and question, at the last meeting, when the subject of Maison du Lac's proximity to this facility came up, it was kind of poo-pooed as, no, that's really not even close. Well, even at 30 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, those distances become very short to the not whatever that subdivision was, this lady was where she lives. Well, and what about, not to mention all the people and children who live in those apartment complexes along Oxnard Boulevard? And you mentioned only one subdivision along 1085 that was within 150 yards or so of this roadway. Right. There's a lot of subdivisions along that roadway that are in all likelihood going to be impacted by having that roadway running behind them. Thanks, Paul.
Listen, and I may miss some of what Mr. Champagne asked about, but just a couple of points. With regards to the distance of Maison du Lac or some of the others, you know, Maison du Lac is about a half a mile away. And reasonable people could disagree, but I will tell you that if you look at the other industrial developments in St. Tammany Parish, if you look at Covington Industrial Park, if you look at Seymour Myers, which is very close to this facility, if you look at North Point Business Park, which is close to this facility, I will submit to you that all of those industrial developments that I just named are far closer, sometimes sharing a property line with residential development. Now, I'm not saying that's a good idea or a bad idea, but my point is that I don't think that I'm totally out of line when I suggest that this facility will have minimal impact on a residential development half mile away. When we talk about locating the facility in a residential area, I think it's only fair to note that there is no residential development that meets any of our boundaries, okay? Maybe that's not the criteria, but the closest residence is 1,528 feet to the corner. So when we look at the other developments in St. Tammany Parish, the other industrial developments, all have residential that are in closer proximity than what we're proposing here. With regards to Mr. Champagne's comment about the access to the site until the connector road is done, obviously that initial access will have to come off of Oxnard Boulevard. I mean, I don't think I'm surprising anybody when I say that. Yes, ma'am?
Hang on one second. Commissioner Seeger, you have a comment to me? Did you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayron.
Yes, sir.
To the zoning part of this, this is currently zoned PBC2. It's going to be developed. We don't know when, if this is approved or if it's going to be later. If this is planned PBC2, can you repeat those statistics on the number of trucks per day that are possible and the number of automobile traffic?
Yeah, so The number of trips under PBC2 generated by this site, both morning and evening, so this is both. This is in the full, both peak times. It would be under PBC2 3,300 trips. The trips generated during the same time frame, the same 24-hour time frame, but not at peak for this facility, would be 800 trips. That includes deliveries, that includes the truck trips, and that includes maximum employees.
And that's peak versus non-peak?
That's that's over a 24-hour period. The 3,300 trips generated by the PBC2, because of the nature of the PBC2 use, office primarily with associated retail and other similar uses, are going to be more on peak. The trips generated by this facility at 800 trips per 24-hour period would be off-peak.
And the 800 is at peak, maybe in 2025 or 2030?
That's correct.
And what would it be now? 60 to 80?
Yes, it would be, right now, it would be about 50 to 60 truck trips per day and about 50 employees over 2 shifts.
And what, if you could...
I'll just add really quick. Our shifts, it's not first and second shift. It's the first period and the second period. And so the first period shift is between 2 and 5 a.m. and the second shift, and they come in waves, 5 to 7 employees, depending on individual orders to different customers and clinics and so forth. And then the second shift is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Would you come up? Just come on up.
I really just have one question. It's for the zoning board. I'm one of quite a few people who went through the comprehensive zoning program several years ago. Doesn't seem like too many. And we were told at that time that this was going to be it. This is the map, and we're, except for small exceptions, we're not going to be asked to make big changes in zoning. What happened to that? I want to know why I went through 50 meetings, I guess, with different people in different sections. Why is that just being totally ignored? Why bother to do all of that if you're just going to turn around and allow everybody to break the rules as they're set? Thank you.
If I could, let me answer that one the easy way. We get petitions from people like you folks out in the audience. I can't tell you how many times people come in and they say, well, we want to subdivide our property so our children can have this and open up a business. We run probably 14 or 15 cases a month, probably on average. Mr. McHugh, sits here with us monthly, and he reports it in the Farmer diligently. But we don't generate a single one of those cases. Those cases are generated by you folks, okay? It's not you today, but it could be you tomorrow. Or it could be your heirs tomorrow, okay? People inherit property, and they inherited a piece of property that was zoned residential. And all of a sudden, they find that there's a dentist that wants to open up a dentist office. That requires rezoning. Okay? So it's not something that's been generated by the parish. It's generated by the people that live in St. Tammany Parish. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but...
I fully understand, a large comprehensive zoning plan takes everything in, and I think when you try to compare somebody's property that they've passed on to their heir that might be 10 acres or something like that is far different than what we're speaking about tonight. So I think they are a little bit different. I understand your point. I do. But
Let me say this to you, though.
Yeah.
So keep this in mind. A PBC to a light industrial is not a residential to commercial. So that property is commercially zoned now under our ordinance and regulations. So to answer the lady's question, the comprehensive rezoning looked at the whole parish. And it really designated, this should be a residential section, this should be a commercial section. Then we finer tune that by these type of things. So a PVC going to AM, that's not a big jump, just to let you know. It's not. It'd be a bigger jump going from residential to something else. You're staying in a commercial type corridor, and it isn't a commercial corridor. No, let him fit. He's up now. But I just want to answer the question more thoroughly, that the comprehensive rezoning was not, it was a different thing, a different animal. And then things have to be tailored now that we've done that. So anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. For Dimitri and Blair, so you mentioned about the criteria, and I would like to know what some of that criteria is. So here's the thing, and Cindy said this as well. It's not that we don't want to continue to have Medline in our parish. You contribute. We know how important it is to our medical community. We love the access to it. But is there a better spot for this that maybe we can help you select based off of that criteria? But if we don't know that criteria, if we don't know those facts, it's kind of hard to say. And with you coming here wanting to be open, I think maybe that's one place to start. So we'll get to that. Now, your traffic for distributing your products. Is the site and going in at this proposed site contingent on having access to the connector road? Because I think that matters with, is that site better, or is another site better that maybe has better access that doesn't impact the neighborhoods quite as much? And then have you been guaranteed that road is going to go in that would help with your distribution?
Thank you very much. Are you a doctor or are you a real estate guy? These are great questions. Yes. Mr. Davis, you helped him out, didn't you? For $2, I understand. So is it possible for us to have a world-class distribution facility in this place without the road extension? The answer is yes. Is it preferable? No. We do count on that road to be in. We do count on that road to be in. I'll answer your question. And in terms of site selection, we do have other options, not in this parish. And I appreciate the offer to help. I have been doing this for 25 years. I know very well what we need to take care of our customers, hospitals, supplies, nursing homes, and other facilities. And this is a supreme location for a state-of-the-art logistics center in this parish, given proximity to our customers, employees, and other things. But yes, there are alternatives, just not in this parish. And we obviously would love to stay in this community and grow in this community. And the third question, absolutely no guarantees of any kind. This is business. This road has nothing to do with Medline. This road, I believe, was in discussion for 10 years, 15 years. And we've been actively engaged in this particular location over the last few months in early 2019. So did I answer your questions? Okay. And I'm sorry, man, you had a question?
It's not his road.
Yeah, the timeline for the connector road, we currently are finishing up 100% plans, and we're working to get the wetlands mitigated, and we should have the project out to bid by the end of the year, I believe.
Have you bought all the right-of-way?
We are in the process of securing all of the property, but we haven't completed that yet.
What is still missing?
I'd have to go back to look at all, I don't have that information in front of me right now.
Why is the road doing it now when they're ready to build?
we obviously going to make sure that it's part of our decision-making process. So the timing of this road, I believe, is fairly imminent in terms of all the decision-making process, and we're obviously watching the progress carefully.
I think her question was, why is the road just happening now? That's not.
I mean, we can't comment on the road timing, but we could tell you in absolute honesty that it's extremely attractive to us to have that road, to have multiple ins and outs out of that facility. It's not critical, but it's preferred, strongly preferred.
Wait, hang on one second, please. Listen, that's a whole different topic that you deal with the parish on. The parish is building the road. It's not Medline. You can address those questions to St. Tammany Parish. This is not the forum for that topic.
Yeah, I just want to make clear, I didn't mean to step on an ant pile with the road talk, but I figure that would be possibly contingent on you accepting this project. But they are separate. They're separate entities. Obviously, it's hard not to separate them, but I think we all need to realize that they are separate. But I guess as well with the access to medical facilities in St. Tammany Parish, you talk about off-peak when most of the distribution will take place. Well, most people are not on the roads, okay? So let's say you went out to another site, like it was mentioned, 1088 and I-12, right? You get off at 65 acres, you get off, you make a right-hand turn off at 1088 onto the interstate. Interstate, you're down at 190. You're down at 21 in 5 minutes. I do it at like 7 o'clock after gymnastics practice, and it takes me 5 minutes. And so I think that would be something to consider, especially if it's early in the morning as during non-peak time. So you could still conduct business in a very efficient manner and get your supplies to where you need them to get. But the impact on the residents would be minimal down there.
Good.
Thanks. I mean, and I understand what you're saying, but with all due respect, I think we have pounded the issue of an alternative site. I think Dimitri has answered at least 3 times that there are no other sites, not 1088 at I-12, that they're interested in or available or pursuing in St. Tammany Parish. So, I mean, I don't want to spend any more time on
Yeah,
that.
no, I think the point is they've selected a location. They've asked for a zoning classification for that location. That's what we're talking about. I think it's great that the public would want to help and offer some solutions possibly, but we can only deal with what they're asking for.
And I realize that a decision's not made tonight, but this was an open forum, a community meeting, and I guess I'm just asking questions that I feel would impact.
No, I think he's resolved to the fact that they have a location. That's the only one they're going to.
Well, I mean, with it being open and with all the respect,
look, I understand. Yeah.
You know, we can ask. I don't think we had a 10-minute time. That's the reason I keep pushing that, 'cause I think it impacts
now,
everything.
we've got people that have still not had an opportunity to ask questions. And wait just a second, if you don't mind. Mr. Marone had about an hour. In another 5 minutes, we've had an hour's worth of questions, and I don't know if we've convinced anybody one way or the other, but there's been information shared back and forth, and that's what we were trying to do. One of the things I did for just a minute, and let me interject this. Let's for just 1 minute, forget about Medline.
That was going to be my point exactly.
Okay. My point is, let me read you, under the current zoning, what could go on that property. This is what it's zoned for today. High-rise office buildings and residential buildings, hotels, motels, and convention centers, colleges, universities, and research centers, public utility facilities, parking lots and decks, and freestanding restaurants. Okay? The question was asked earlier, was the road going to be built? Until the road is built, it's very unlikely that anybody's going to build these kind of buildings on some very expensive property. And the parish is not going to benefit from the taxes from it. Okay? Okay,
Well, y'all are part of the parish.
you're part of the parish
Right.
now.
It'd be your taxes that would benefit you.
If we can't have order and respect in here when we're talking, I don't boo you when you get up to talk, and I don't get up and make funny noises and all that kind of foolishness, and I would expect the same from you. If we don't do this, if we don't do what they want to do, don't have it in your mind that it's going to stay sweet pine trees forever. That's not going to happen, okay? That's just not going to happen. The road is going to be built, and something is going to be built there. And I don't know if it's going to be a bunch of high-rise buildings, hotels, motels, or convention centers. I don't know what it's going to be. But someone will come up with a proposal, and something will be built, okay? Now, you've
Thank you.
waited patiently.
Thank you. And Mr. Lauren, I was going to make that very point, but let me read to you what can be on that property should it be zoned AML. These are some of the things: automotive, research, development, and manufacturing, durable goods manufacturing, and my favorite down here, let's see, pharmaceutical manufacturing, as well as food products processing and manufacturing. So I'd rather have that hotel on that property than to have one of those things. You said, let's take Medline out of the equation, and I kind of like hearing from Medline because they seem like really good people. But they haven't purchased anything from the Wainers yet. I have. I have a lot. I have a home that was promised in a residential, quiet community. If Medline purchases this, they might be wonderful neighbors. They're going to have a traffic impact that's going to be deadly for our subdivisions, but I think they would be great neighbors aside from those impacts. However, they haven't purchased anything yet. They're proposing to, if the wetlands permits come through, if the rezoning or the next stage of that one little section of the property comes through, all of that has to happen, and it hasn't. We can't count on Medline being there. You have to make a decision before that goes through. So your decision is only whether or not you're going to change it from the current zoning to AML. And what I'm suggesting is AML, unlike what you said, is a very big change from the current zoning. What you're saying has to do with if Medline's there, it's not a big change. We don't know that Medline will be there. I think we don't. Too many things can happen in the meantime. If you can guarantee us, I mean, is that part of the zoning proposal, and I plead ignorance on this, that it's only rezoned if Medline goes? Or is it rezoned and then if Medline falls through for any reason?
No, but Paul, do you want to address that? Yep.
Oh, can I ask one more question while I have the floor? And it's also for you. There are 200 plus other residents who haven't been addressed yet, and they're the residents of the Forest Manor Nursing Home. How close are you to that?
We'll start with Forest Manor, and we are in touch with Forest Manor. Now, admittedly, we didn't speak to each of the residents in Forest Manor, but we did speak to the administrators and owners of Forest Manor, and they are supportive of the project. They are currently. You asked the question. I mean, I'm just giving you the answer. Yes,
sir.
We will be glad to provide that in writing. So, good question about the other uses in the zone, and Ms. Wagner actually raised that a long time ago, and then we kind of got sidetracked off that issue onto some other issues. But at that time, we had told her, and we're happy to tell you and everybody else in the room, that there is a long list of uses in this zone. We have one use, that's what Medline is proposing, and Medline and Mr. Wainer are agreeable to deed restricting that property against those other uses. Now, how does that work? Typically, when a deed restriction is put in place, that is something that is done prior to the passage or in conjunction with the passage of the ordinance that changes the zoning of the property. So ultimately, whatever the zoning commission were to decide, even if there were no appeal, which there will be in this case, it'll go to the council. The council has to pass an ordinance that has to be introduced, laid over for 30 days, and then acted upon before the zoning is actually changed. And so at the time that that ordinance is ready to be adopted, the deed restriction would be executed by the owner of the property. It would be filed into the public records. It would restrict those other uses, and it would be binding with the property. It would run with the property. If Medline, something happened there and somebody else bought it, they would be subject to those restrictions. So that is something that we would be willing to do. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Paul. What would be the dominant and the subservient estates on that proposed deed restriction?
Well, we could just, so I guess what you're asking, when you talk about the dominant and servient estates in a predial sense, but I mean, in this instance, it would be predial insofar as it runs with the property. And so the dominant estate, if you will, the estate with enforcement rights, we would be open to discussing that with you.
Okay. Because my question is, if it's typically, yeah, I knew you would understand that. Typically, it would be an adjoining landowner. And if all of the adjoining property is also owned by Mr. Wayner's company, then that puts it in a little bit different situation. And we don't need to talk this out tonight, but I wanted to address it since you...
Certainly run in favor of other parties. It doesn't have to be an adjoining landowner.
Okay, and normally under that sort of law, there is an end date. In other words, it doesn't run in perpetuity. It would run maybe 50 years.
It can run rolling 50-year period, so it's not in perpetuity.
So, I mean, there
are ways to address that.
Okay, and just so, just to be clear, because I addressed this in a community meeting that we had planning our list of questions, I said that, yes, I had been asked about deed restrictions. I haven't had dinner yet. Anyway, deed restrictions, and yes, I did send an email about that, and I'm putting this out here because Marty Dean asked me about deed restrictions, and during the night after I sent him that email, I woke up, I didn't sleep for hours and hours. At 6:30 in the morning, I wrote him, and I said, this won't solve anything, and I know he sent you a copy of that email, so let's just, I'm just being very clear that, yes, we had this discussion, but I stated my reasons why it would not work and why it was not a good idea. So, and with that...
Let me interject. We've run over 2 hours already.
Thank you for an opportunity to talk. I'd like to address.
Would you wait just one moment? I'm speaking. Okay. We've run over 2 hours already. I'm gonna say another 15 minutes and then we're through. Okay? Okay. Now you can.
All right. 2 questions from Mr. Dimitri and 1 question for the council. Okay? No one has addressed the height of this project. That is particularly pertinent information for me. I happen to live on Lake Tahoe Drive. On this map, it's right here. We're really close to this project. This is scary stuff for me. Okay? How tall is an 800,000 square foot building going to be? I'm going to be able to walk out of my backyard and see it. That's what I'm afraid of. Number 2, I don't know about anyone else in the room, but I've never seen a state-of-the-art 18-wheeler. I don't know what that is. I know what 18-wheelers look like. I know what they smell like. I know they're loud. They shake the ground all around you. So maybe I can get an explanation there. And before we go to you, I'd like to address the other thing about zoning. Just like we're talking about a zone change to put industrial, we can also talk about a zone change to go residential instead. Well, why is that an impossibility? We're talking about an industrial.
You asked a question, let me explain.
Okay.
We can do that at the request of
Of
the
the owner?
person that owns the property.
Okay. But that's not an impossibility. So it's not like this will be the end of the world for this property and we're going to be stuck with this other commercial stuff. There's also an opportunity for us to get together and sensibly turn this into residential. Am I correct?
Sure, buy the
Okay.
property. Yeah.
Okay.
Property.
Thank you, sir. When I refer to the state-of-the-art technology, including our trucks, I mean they're best in class that we could purchase. They're brand new pieces of equipment. These are not 50-year-old diesel trucks. These are brand new trucks. We swap them every 5 years, and we make sure that they're the best that the market has to offer. That's what I mean by state-of-the-art. That's one. Two is, this is a big distribution center. It's 40 feet high. 40 feet high. And I believe on most sides it will be fully shielded by the trees. Most from I-12, certainly from Oshner, and I do need to confirm from the pond perspective. But we're definitely willing to work to make sure that we preserve a certain amount of trees that are there today to shield our facility from any neighborhood that's east of us. So, to anybody who is over here. East. That's east, yeah. Right, okay. I thought it's different than Chicago. It's the same here. Yeah. Yes, sir. So obviously, you know, the 25 acres we're not purchasing here because we no longer need to have our own pond. So all these woods are in place. This facility, there will be continued woods on both sides, and we do need to make sure that that we maintain adequate amount of shielding with existing and new trees. To I'm sorry, do you live in this area, east? Okay. Yes. Okay. Yep. So, yes, we're definitely going to take that into account to ensure that our facility is minimized. It is a big facility. It's 40 feet high, but it's 40 feet high. But we have 45 of those, and over the last 100 years, we've learned how to, you know, manage the situations, and we'll certainly do our best to minimize the impact. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the closest residence to the building is 1,528 feet. So, gentleman right here. That's in Shady Lakes. That's on the west side. On the east side, from here to the beginning of Normandy Oaks, about 1,800 feet. Yeah, so it's about 1,800 feet to the roundabout from the building is 1,109 feet. So there's about another 700 or so feet from there to the village at Normandy Oaks. I would point out too one other thing. I think when the issue of the height of the buildings, PBC2 allows 100-foot buildings. So there are 10-story buildings allowed under PBC2. I just wanted to point that out. Yes, sir.
One question. What's the weight of the typical delivery to a hospital or something like that? Well, actually, two questions. And the future, right now, you got a technology problem, and that is we have to travel on roads. What if you decided to use something in just air transport? And it's already being done.
Yeah.
Have y'all thought about that?
I'll let him try to answer that.
I'm sorry, so you mean like a helicopter? Or like a drone? I mean, obviously, we have no plans to use helicopters or drones or plane on this facility. It is a distribution center. I will tell that during the Katrina, we were behind the first responders, and we're responsible for engaging hundreds of helicopters to save the patients. So during certain situations, we will allow Homeland Security to use our parking lot for their for their helicopters. That is possible, but that is obviously not a daily occurrence. We will not use anything but cars, trucks, and vans. That is the only way to distribute from this facility. Yes. No, ma'am. No, we will not. Absolutely not.
The weight of the trucks. There's
These are single axle trucks.
The average delivery to a hospital or facility, what would that be?
Which way we're going? It's probably an average between 10 and 20 tons. I mean, you have a truck that can handle anywhere from 10 to 20 pallets of product. And obviously it depends on the pallet. If it's diapers, if it's surgical instrumentation, if it's water, if it's mattresses, if it's, surgical equipment of some sort, it varies wildly. But on average, our trucks will have 10 to 15 pallets. If it's a truck or if it's a van, like a FedEx van. We'll also have vans. And obviously in the future, as we're introducing electrical fleet, those have different capacities as well.
I work in the area where the 250 square foot facility is now. I work in the area where the facility is now, and I see more trucks, different trucks, than your Medlock trucks. Now, are you going to have those as well as FedEx, as well as employee cars, as well as other vehicles going to and from this facility? Also, I live off of Lake Tahoe, where Ryan lives nearby, and you talk about off-peak, okay? I know this has been brought up, but when you arrive and leave to the facility, we're just going to bed. We're just getting up. We're trying to go to sleep. There's a lot of elderly in our neighborhood. There's a lot of young families in our neighborhood, which means that they go to bed early and rise early. So how's that going to work with vehicles going back and forth like that, plus the different types of trucks that we have? I see a lot of different trucks coming and going during the workday.
Thank you very much. We're obviously located in the park that has other facilities as well. Today, probably 70% of all their fleet is done between Medline and FedEx. 30%, there are other providers. Potentially could be XPO, it could be other folks as well. But I'm sorry? JB Hunt. It could be JB Hunt. But as we move into a new facility and we bring our own operations, we'll increase Medline trucks and FedEx trucks. Those should be vast majority. On the receiving side, during the hours of 10 and 2, we could be receiving product that is coming in from other providers, but that should be a minority. Our goal is to maintain the fleet of Medline trucks and Medline drivers. In terms of the noise and during the early hours, obviously from our perspective, I don't think I can say anything to make you happy with the answer, but what I will say is there is 40,000 cars and trucks and vans traveling between 77 and, I could probably get that wrong, 77 and 21 and I-12 today. So the 50 to 60 trips that we're going to do today and 175 in the future compared to the 40,000 collectively that you have in the region, we represent less than 0.5% of the volume that is taking place today. So from our perspective, from our research, we certainly think it's minimum and not significant based on what's in place today. And certainly there will be significant, some sort of impact whether Medline is here or we leave the parish and it's developed as, a call center or office or, community center or some other location. So it's definitely some impact, I agree. But whatever is developed there in the next 10 years will have an impact on anybody nearby. And that's fair and honest, I think.
If I could have your attention for just one moment, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't have the question.
Time is about up.
No, ma'am. No, sorry.
I'm going to allow 2 more questions, and I think the lady back there has had her hand up for an hour and a half. And it would not be fair.
Has anybody thought about the fact that we're going to be Has anybody considered the fact that they're supposed to be widening I-12 in the next few years, and the construction of this road supposedly is going to be in the next 2 or 3 years, and the construction of this building, and all the other things, the impact on this? We don't have any other east-west access except 190. Brewster, 22 is a mess. Has anybody thought about the timing of how these things are going to happen concurrently?
Not an issue.
Do you want to add
Staff question.
Yes.
I would like to address that to the parish in some other fashion.
Let me get Paul off. Let me get Paul off the hook real quick on that one.
This is not the forum for that, ma'am.
Well,
I'm sorry, but it's just not.
But I think timing of this issue kind of does matter. So maybe we want Medline to come in. We want that to be rezoned. We want that to change. Maybe this is not the time to do it. We don't have the infrastructure to handle something that large. But if we looked at, hey, the interstate's going to be widened, let's all work together and push that to happen. Okay, let's have a meeting about that and have that happen so that your trucks can get on the interstate easier. Maybe there's a direct access from some other place when it gets wider. Maybe we can do that. So the timing just maybe isn't right. So if this rezoning doesn't happen and you're not able to move, does that change your timing, your perspective on the site, on staying in St. Tammany? What sort of things does, again, everything's about timing, and certainly the rezoning starts it all. But does that change how you feel about that? Do you have, hey, if this doesn't happen by a certain date, we're gone?
Fair question.
Tough questions. That's okay. I could tell you that obviously I'm not in a position to say that, if this doesn't happen by a certain date, we're going to, pick up and leave. St. Tammany, it's been home for 15 years. You own your home, something happens, you're not going to pick up and leave. So we will evaluate our options. We obviously, the business has been around for 100 years. We have plan B, we have plan C. We always plan ahead. Everything we have to have a plan. When you're part of healthcare, supplying hospitals and taking care of patients every day, you cannot rely everything at one time. The only thing I could tell you with certainty, this is the only site in this parish. We have plan B and plan C, but nothing else in this parish. So we obviously want to be welcome. We think we're a great partner to any community, not only in the initial $60 million investment and 250 jobs, not only millions of dollars we spend on support services in terms of maintaining our assets and doing, going to the local restaurants and having our folks live in this community, but just volunteering, adding to the fire department, helping the police department, all those individual things, paying our taxes. All these things are important to us as well. But if we obviously, can't go through the process in a fairly expedient manner, we have our plan B. The only thing I can tell you, it's not in this parish.
So let's.
I'm going to wrap.
No, I'm going to wrap it up. You finish with what you have to say.
So I do want to say, weeks and weeks ago, we met and we had conversations about getting information out, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the development group, thank the citizens for engaging with these conversations, thank the commissioners for putting the time in to do this. Because I think this is valuable, and we were able to share the facts. We're able to have all the interested parties. I mean, even President Brister showed up. I think that's a pretty big deal. So I just want to take that opportunity. I will let you finish. I apologize, but I just think it was important to recognize that everybody showed up tonight for the community good.
Okay. It may or may not have shown through, but the four of us have tried to be as impartial as we can be up here today. All we were trying to do was facilitate a meeting between the two parties. And if I've said anything that offended anybody or riled anybody, I sincerely apologize. It wasn't intended. I was just trying to keep the meeting on track so that we could do what we were here to do. And just as information, out of the four of us that are sitting up here, two of us live within fair close proximity to this proposed facility, okay? So we understand where you come from, okay? And Sydney, I know, has seen me on more, I've been on the commission for 7 years, I think now, but for 15 years before that, he saw me on the other side of the fence where you are, okay? But there were many times where meetings like this would open up the gates where whether it's a deed restriction or it's a, well, what if you do this or what if you do that, we could come to a mutual agreement so that when it came back before the zoning commission, that the former opponents would get up and say, we fully support this. And we would ask that both sides have an open mind, go into this thing and see before we meet on October the 9th, where we have to make a decision on the zoning commission. But both sides try to work it out, okay? If you possibly can. If you can't, we'll send it on up, either side can send it on up to the parish council and they'll decide for you, okay? But you have more leverage right now than you will when you turn it loose, okay? With that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank the staff and the other commissioners for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you.